Hi, everyone. I just wanted to ask, first of all, as you come in, maybe if you could mute your microphones, that would be really great. We're about to start. Um, and as more people come in as well, we kind of manage that process. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. In some cases, I know across the globe, we have a nice spread of people here today. I am Janine Xavier Cross, and I am the Senior Program Officer responsible for the networks at the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you here today for our webinar on women's political participation, the role of political parties. We're really happy to have you with us and really looking forward to what is going to be a really inspirational, very insightful conversation, we hope. Our session today will last for about 90 minutes, and we'll kick off with a snapshot of like the political landscape in your countries, gathered from your registration responses, and some data collected by the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. After that, we'll have two panel discussions, one exploring the inside perspective of political actors, and the other on how to influence political parties to increase women's representation. We will end with a Q&A session, so feel free throughout to submit any questions or comments or thoughts or responses in the chat, in the Zoom chat at any time. So just to touch a quick few housekeeping announcements, to ensure that you have the best experience, please mute your microphone, as I mentioned, particularly during the individual presentations, just to avoid any background noise. And just a heads up, the session is being recorded, and we will share the recording along with any materials after the session, so don't be concerned about that. And we encourage active engagement through the chat. And we'll address as many questions as we can, as much as time allows during the Q&A session. So let's get straight into it. And of course, I really want to encourage you to have a really great discussion on women's political participation. Now, to really officially kick off the entire webinar, I am pleased to welcome Ms. Rosette Gibson, Chairperson of the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, who will provide our opening remarks. Councillor Gibson is the Chairperson of the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, and she sits on the Board of Directors for CLGF. She has dedicated her career to public service, recently completing her second term as the Chief Counselor for Freeport, Bahamas. A strong advocate for women's political participation, Councillor Gibson has made significant contributions to local governance. Frizette, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, distinguished speakers, esteemed participants, and all of you joining us today. It is my great honor to welcome you to this important webinar on women's political participation, the role of political parties. We are gathered here today to explore a topic that lies at the heart of women's political advancement, not just within local government, but also the national and subnational levels. This discussion, supported by our distinguished partners, promises to be both enlightening and action-oriented. Before we begin, let me take a moment to acknowledge the two networks that have come together to host this session. The Commonwealth Local Government Forum, through its Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, in collaboration with the Commonwealth Parliamentarian Association, through its Commonwealth Women Parliamentarian Network. These networks play a crucial role in promoting gender equality and women's leadership in political spaces, from councils to parliament. As the chairperson of Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, I'm deeply committed to the advancement of women in local governance, an area where our impact is felt most directly in people's everyday lives. The work we do is essential to ensuring women's voices are not only heard, but also acted upon. Since our establishment in 2017, we have been working relentlessly to promote women's political inclusion, particularly at the local government level. We connect women leaders across the Commonwealth, share best practices, secure funding, and advocate for gender-sensitive policies. Our goal is clear: to create a world where women are empowered to shape the political systems that affect their lives, both locally and globally. In addition, we are thrilled to have our colleagues from the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarian Network joining us today. The Commonwealth Women Parliamentarian Network, established in 1989, represents over 3,000 women parliamentarians across 180 Commonwealth national and subnational parliaments. The CWP is dedicated to improving the effectiveness and representation of women in parliamentary leadership. They work to ensure that gender perspectives are embedded in legislation, oversight, and representation. Today's session is of utmost importance because political parties can either be gateways or gatekeepers when it comes to increasing women's political representation. Despite the progress we've made, the numbers still tell a story of underrepresentation. Only a quarter of Commonwealth parliamentarians are women, and at the local government level, women occupy just 27% of seats, with the numbers varying drastically from country to country. This gap is even more pronounced when considering the underrepresentation of young women in politics. Our session will focus on understanding the landscape in which political parties operate, identifying positive practices that are already making a difference, and addressing the resistance political parties face when it comes to increasing women's representation. We will also discuss the strategies and tools that can be used to ensure that political parties are held accountable in their commitment to gender parity. As we look to the future, our goal is not only to reflect on the challenges, but also to draw inspiration from those who are already working to make meaningful changes and highlight good practices from across our network that can be replicated. Together, we can amplify these successes and ensure that political parties are true allies in the fight for gender equality. With this, I now invite you to engage with our diverse panel, who will provide us with invaluable insights and share their experiences. Let's work together to turn today's conversation into lasting action. Thank you, and let's look forward to an engaging and meaningful conversation today. Good morning.
Thank you so much, Frazette. You really set the tone. You started us off on the right footing, and we're ready for the discussion. We're going to hear more from Frazette later on in the discussion, of course. So to start, we really wanted to get a sense of the political landscape from your perspectives. So when you registered, you responded to a few questions, and now I'll try to share the results of those responses as succinctly as I can so we can see where we stand. Thanks, Claire. So, as Councillor Gibson mentioned, 2024 really was a crucial year for elections. It was marked by major elections across the globe, but with a very startling result: the slowest growth in female political representation in 2 decades. This is a global trend that shows a decline in the number of women elected to both parliaments and to local governments. Next slide. The Commonwealth Local Government Forum tracks women's leadership in local government across the Commonwealth. So based on data from 42 countries, the average percentage of women holding local government seats is 27%. However, as shown in the table on the screen, this varies widely. Some countries have as few as 3.8% of women in local government, while others have as many as high a percentage as 66%. The Commonwealth really has a commitment, a very clear commitment, which is really to achieving and encouraging at least 30% of women in public life. Next slide. On the positive side, however, 35% of Commonwealth countries have actually reached or surpassed the 30% target for women in local government. But at least that is what it looked like maybe before last year's elections. However, some countries still have less than 10% of women in their local government systems, showing that there's progress. However, it's inconsistent and it really requires further effort. I really flagged, as I mentioned before, new results will be coming out, so we'll continue to update this information and I encourage you to look for it on our website. Next slide. Turning to the parliaments now, the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians tracks the number of women in national and in subnational parliaments across the Commonwealth on an annual basis. This is actually published online on their website, and based on data as at September 2024, the total number of women parliamentarians is 6,085, and the total average percentage across the Commonwealth of women in parliament is 25.8%. So it's similar to the numbers that we have in local government. The charts on the screen provide a ranked list of the percentage of women in national parliaments across the CPA region, legislatures, and their national legislatures as well. Just so that you know, while there has been an improvement and an increase, there are still some legislatures with no women parliamentarians. In the CPA membership, this is the case for 15 state-level parliaments in Nigeria and National Parliament of Tuvalu. Next slide. So we wanted to ground this conversation in your own experiences. So we gathered input from all the persons registering to participate in today's webinar, and you represented countries covering all the regions of the Commonwealth. And we wanted to make sure that there was a diverse range of perspectives, and this is what we were able to see to inform today's discussion. So these are the countries, some of the countries that were able to respond and hopefully are here today. Next slide. One area that we actually explored is the impact of electoral systems on women's political participation. In your registration responses, we asked about two key systems: proportional representation and ward-based systems. 60% of the registrants come from countries that use ward-based systems, while 47% use the proportional representation system. Next slide. The key sentiment that we got from your responses around the proportional representation system is that it is designed to enhance gender equality by encouraging party list nominations and gender quotas. This system really increases women's representation in the legislative bodies. However, the system's reliance on party leadership for nominations limits women's autonomy, and financial constraints along with the patriarchal societal structures still continue to pose a lot of barriers to the full participation of women in these structures. Next slide. On the other hand, just go back one slide if we could, Claire. Right. On the other hand, the ward-based system offers some direct elections, potentially increasing women's local participation. However, it presents significant barriers. Male incumbents dominate. Cultural biases limit support for women candidates, and financial constraints make it harder for women to compete, resulting in low female representation. Next slide. We also noticed that in some countries, a combination of these two systems, the PR system and the ward-based systems, is used. So while PR boosts overall women's representation, the ward-based system often hinders the local success due to the patriarchal biases. For true gender parity, reforms across both the systems are needed to ensure that women have equal access to political leadership and to decision-making. Next slide. Next, we looked at the role of political parties in getting women elected. As shown in the results, political parties are overwhelmingly seen as critically important for electoral success. So this webinar is perfectly in tune with what's happening on the ground. Next slide. We also asked about the role of political parties in election campaigns. So again, the overwhelming response is that political parties play a major role in shaping campaigns, underlining their influence on political success, especially for women candidates. And finally, we explored the prevalence of quota systems for political representation. You can see in the screen, the results show a near equal split. Some countries have actually implemented quotas while others have not. And this really highlights the varied approaches and the ongoing debate about the effectiveness of quotas themselves in achieving gender parity. That's it for the slides. Thanks, Claire. So really, in summary, everyone, while there have been significant positive strides in some areas, we also continue to have significant challenges for women in politics. The electoral systems, political parties, and quotas all play crucial roles, but reforms are absolutely necessary to overcome the barriers and also to achieve true gender equality in political representation. So now that we have an overview, it's time for our first panel discussion. We'll explore, first of all, the crucial role political parties play in increasing women's political inclusion. And for this, I'm really delighted to welcome our first three panelists. Firstly is Honorable Florence Namayanja, and she's the mayor of Masaka City in Uganda. She has an extensive career spanning local government, national politics, and community development, and she has been a dedicated advocate for women's political participation and leadership. Previously, she was also a member of Parliament. Honorable Namayanja is also the regional coordinator for the National Unity Platform that is committed to empowering the next generation of women leaders. Our second speaker will be Honorable Karina Alves, and she's the Deputy of St. Helier Central in Jersey. Deputy Karina Alves is an Assistant Chief Minister, Assistant Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, and Assistant Minister for Housing in the government of Jersey. She wears so many hats. First elected to the State of Jersey Assembly in 2018, she was re-elected in 2022. A member of Reform Jersey, the only political party at the time of her election. Deputy Alves is the first person of Portuguese heritage elected to the State of Jersey Assembly. And our third speaker will be Councillor Flora Mboa Boltman. She is the Deputy President of the South African Local Government Association, also known as SALGA. She's also the former chairperson of the SALGA Women's Commission. She's a leading advocate for gender equality within local governments across Africa, and she serves at the Gert Sibande District Municipality in South Africa. Councillor Flora Mboa Boltman has actually been very instrumental in promoting women's voices in governance through the SALGA Women's Commission. So what's going to happen is that each speaker today will address a set of questions really that we kind of put to them to kind of guide their thoughts, guide the conversation. And just to share some of the things we're asking them to speak on, we thought we'd explore, first of all, an insider's perspective. We wanted to really hear from them their own personal reflections on how their party supported their political journey and the kind of challenges as well as the kind of support that they received. We also asked them to look at the kind of barriers that exist for women advancing within political parties and how they have seen any programs or any policies that actually work to overcome those issues and those barriers. We asked them to also look at how institutions, like we know there are women's caucuses or advocacy groups, and any other those sorts of institutions, how they influence party policies for women's representation. And finally, we asked them to just reflect on what actions should political parties take to promote gender parity and diversity. That was a mouthful. So now I'm going to hand over to Honorable Florence Namayanja. We'll start with you for the Ugandan experience.
Thank you so much. I have already been introduced. My name is Florence Namayanja. I'm the mayor of Masaka City. I'm so grateful to be here today. I have been in the past in 2 political parties, and until the year 2020, when I joined the National Unity Platform, I was a member of the Democratic Party, where I led women in the Women League. And that has given me strength to participate at all levels in the political arena. As you are aware, being on the opposition is something which you stand with a lot of strength and commitment. We are competing with the ruling party, and our competition has always been seen as an inspiration to women. I have held several positions in my political parties. Currently, I coordinate the Greater Masaka region, which has 9 districts. It is worth noting that my current political party, which is the National Unity Platform, has been in the political arena for only 4 years. But even then, it has been very supportive. And I'm what I am because of the strength thrown behind me by my party, including my party president. We in Uganda here, we have a lot of issues when it comes to opposition politics. There is a lot of monetization of politics, intimidation, false accusations, biased media coverage, use of state resources by those in the ruling government. So being a member on the opposite side is a big challenge. And among the challenges that we have are the financial constraints we have in elections. The elections have become so expensive. It is even worse for women since men outspend the female counterparts who do not usually have access to resources. Our politics in Uganda in the recent years has been so monetized. Hello? Hello?
You are clear.
Please go
Continue.
ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Yes, the biggest
Loud
challenge has been
and clear.
financial constraints, I said. Because here in Uganda, we have problems, especially women. We don't have that political muscle to compete with the male-dominated political arena. And that becomes a challenge. My party is at the forefront of upholding democratic values, consistently condemning voter buyouts. I think you've been hearing my president coming out to fight corruption and manipulations in elections. Our party organization abilities have steered us to a greater height. It has positioned me as a person, among others, as the trusted alternative. And that's why I've been winning. I stand on a direct seat. I compete with men, and all the time I've been winning because I stand out to be strong. I stand out to speak on ideology and values that attract other people to listen. We have limitations, as you know, if I talk on the other larger scope of women in education. Having men having better academic qualifications, women have limitations. Women have financial constraints, and the hurdle of being a mother, being a nurse, and being poor to support yourself is a problem. Women find it hard to secure funding for their campaigns. If we look at gender, Uganda is one of the countries that has got very good laws on the quota system. And we have been trying to see that more women come on board. But you'll find out that it is the same women who keep on coming without giving a chance to others, because that slot is for women. So me, what I would think is that we find a way of limiting those who have already come on the platform to create room for others. Politics in our context has been historically male dominated, and sometimes women face brutal scrutiny that scares them to go for big positions. In Uganda, as you know, all political parties are led by men. And unfortunately, there was only one political party which was led by a woman, but still she was compromised and taken to the ruling party. She's now the IGG, Madame Betkamia. So when I look at the ruling government, they are poaching on political parties. All the good cream of women who come up are bought by the ruling government and taken on to work for government. That is a very big challenge to us who advocate for change, especially in the country that has had a president for coming now for over 40 years. So I feel that we need to do a lot, and I'm happy that the Commonwealth is coming out at this time to look at how political parties can bring out women issues and come out with results. Political parties can also promote fair competition within the party for party tickets. They can encourage women to stand on direct seats and not just women quotas. So this is what I had to share today. And if there is anything more, I can come in to address it. I thank you so much for giving me such an opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Honorable Namayanjo. We really have been able to get that Ugandan experience, and a lot of the issues that actually the people were reflecting on in their initial responses, as well in the registration poll, came up there in the Ugandan experience. We'll come back to those things as well later on. Thank you very much. Second, we'll have Honorable Karina Alves. It will be really interesting to hear from you the small state perspective. So over to you for the experience in Jersey.
Thank you very much, and hello everybody. I'm
What about Turia?
extremely honoured for the opportunity to
Ala
speak
ne
today.
dogre ne yasa muke tsaya.
Side Spanish. Ta ku bara.
Ala yana nan kan can.
I
Network
think
din ne
somebody
duka
else
ya
is
tsaya.
talking at the same time. Can you hear me okay?
Kin ji? A tare suke komai.
Okay. So I'm Deputy Karina Alves, an elected member of the States of Jersey, our parliament here in the island of Jersey in the Channel Islands. I'm a proud member of Reform Jersey, a social democratic centre-left political party, not to be confused with Reform UK. Reform Jersey was established over a decade ago now, and we were the only official party on the island during the majority of that time. Up until recently, we had the emergence of other parties in the last election in 2022. As mentioned before, I was first elected in 2018, and I'm currently in my second term. Before entering politics, I was a secondary school maths teacher and a medical secretary, where I worked closely with our Portuguese-speaking community. I've also worked as a youth worker and a teaching assistant with special needs children. I'm second-generation Portuguese. My parents are both from Madeira, a small Portuguese island, and they moved to Jersey in the 70s. I was born here, grew up here, and aside from my time at university in Bristol and Wales, I've lived on the island my entire life. So just to give you a bit of context, Jersey is a very small island. It is 9 by 5 miles with a population of approximately 103,000. Politically, we are a small jurisdiction with an assembly made up of 49 elected members. Our island is home to a large and diverse population, which I would say has historically had a significant gap in political knowledge and engagement, particularly among our minority communities. And with a growing blended population, many people just do not understand the political system fully. And I think this is reflected in the very low voter turnout figures that we have, which is one of the lowest in the OECD countries. Personally, I didn't grow up immersed in political knowledge, but my mother was always very interested in politics. She had grown up on a Portuguese island where politics was taught in schools and spoken about openly. So she always made sure that we went out to vote as a family. But honestly, I didn't really understand the political process here in Jersey until I was older. In fact, it wasn't until I went to university in the UK and there was a general election that I truly realised how important it is for everyone to be engaged in politics. My first interaction with an elected member in Jersey came in 2014 when I saw a tweet from our constable, which is the equivalent of a mayor of our capital, St Helier, who was noting the lack of candidates from a Portuguese and Polish communities in the election. Realising how little political awareness there was among many in our community, I decided to tweet back saying that I was from a Portuguese community, but felt that I lacked the confidence to run due to my own lack of political education. Fast forward to January 2018, and the next general election was coming up. I'd moved to a new school, but I was feeling quite unsettled and I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go in with my career. I actually happened to share my feelings with a colleague who was a sister of a member of Reform Jersey and also a past colleague of mine from a previous school. Her sister had a partner who is one of the Reform Jersey's elected members and who, after hearing about me, actually reached out directly. And this began my journey into politics. Initially, I was excited, but I was also reluctant and riddled with self-doubt because after all, I'd never done a job where I hadn't undertaken some training or some education, or I'd at least had the opportunity to volunteer. There also wasn't a clear job descriptor for this role, which I could reference in order to feel confidence. And let's be honest, even if there was, we know that statistically, women are less likely to apply for a job unless they meet 100% of the listed requirements, compared to men who tend to apply when they only meet about 60%. I also had never seen someone like me, a woman from a minority community, in a position of leadership, and I wondered if I was the right person for the job. And even though Reform Jersey was very encouraging, I struggled to feel that I was competent enough. But Reform Jersey provided me with the training, mentorship and support that I needed. They held a number of meetings with candidates, and we even did mock hustings, which really helped me build my confidence. I was also fortunate enough to be standing in a district with the longest serving elected member of the party, who was a fantastic, invaluable mentor during this time. His support helped me feel more confident and prepared. When the election came, I was the only woman to be elected as a member of Reform Jersey and the first person of Portuguese heritage. This achievement was incredibly significant, not just for me, but for the Portuguese community here in Jersey, which makes up approximately 15% of the population. I believe that representation is crucial in inspiring others to believe that they too can achieve and make a difference in the community. Looking at the wider picture of women's participation in politics, I believe that there are several challenges that women face when entering and advancing within politics. Societal expectations, gender biases, family responsibilities, and a lack of representation in leadership positions are some of the most significant hurdles. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that women's experiences are different from men, and political parties need to take this into account. For example, many women have additional considerations, such as caring for children or managing household responsibilities. I've had many one-on-one conversations with women to hear their concerns, share my own experiences, and encourage them to stand. Conversations which, had they not happened, I firmly believe they would not have stood for election. I think our track record in the Assembly as a party who always pushes through policies which increase inclusion and equity for the public, as well as advocating for family-friendly practices in Parliament, has also played a really important role in increasing the public's trust and confidence in the party. Even as somebody without children, I fully support and advocate for these policies because I understand that the barriers women face in entering politics are very real. Many women also face a lack of confidence, in part because of historical and cultural factors that tell them they shouldn't or can't pursue a career in politics, but also due to a lack of delivery of political awareness and education. So since being elected, I've become a champion for raising political awareness and education in the island. In my first term, I set up the parliamentary subcommittee, the first parliamentary subcommittee on the island, dedicated to raising political awareness and education and to engage with the public about the work of the Assembly. More recently, the requirement for this subcommittee to become a standing committee enshrined into our standing orders was unanimously supported by the Assembly. So it's no longer dependent on whether I get elected or if someone else decides to take it on. It is now a requirement of our parliamentary process. At the 22 election, my party doubled its numbers of elected members from 5 to 10, and our gender balance is 50-50 now. This is a significant achievement for the party, and I believe it reflects our commitment to pushing for inclusive and equitable representation. It is crucial that political parties support their women candidates, not only through mentorship and training, but also by providing the flexibility that allows them to balance their personal lives with political engagement. I know that ultimately the support I received from my party was absolutely essential to my success. Without their encouragement, mentorship and inclusive policies, and having men who I saw as true allies, I never would have stood for election. Political parties have an enormous power to change the course of a person's life simply by creating an environment where all voices, regardless of gender, can be heard and valued. So finally, I'd like to leave you with some thoughts. Never underestimate the power you have as a role model. Never underestimate the power of having those one-on-one conversations that can change someone's life. Be unapologetic and have those political conversations. Plant those seeds of possibility. We all have the power to lift others up. So be the person who says someone else's name in a room when they're not there. Because if someone hadn't done that for me, I wouldn't be here today speaking to you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic contribution, Karina. Thank you. You spoke about clarity on the roles, providing clarity to encourage people feelings of competence to be able to apply for positions, mentoring, capacity building, and the need for raising political awareness and education, having men as allies. A lot of very key points. And the conversation is continuing. Just to note here, I do see your hand from the states of deliberation. I'm just encouraging you all to know that we will take questions and comments later on in the Q&A session too. So keep your questions, note them in the chat if you like, and we'll come to that later on. Okay, thank you again, Karina. And finally, we have Councillor Flora Maboa Boltman. You also, we want to encourage you here to come and speak. You also bring a local government association experience where you've had this very unique youth leadership with the role of the Women's Commission. So share with us your perspectives from South Africa as well.
Thank you very much, Janine, and greetings to all the beautiful ladies here, and they spoke very well. And I was tempted to serve under their leadership as well. Let me take this opportunity to greet all of you here. It's 10 to 4 in the afternoon. And I've seen you are here, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Zainib Kimba, the mayor who spoke earlier, Namanja, Honorable Karina, Honorable Davis, Miss Emanti, and executive mayors, and all who are here. Let me just switch the camera off and start. I will follow the questions as was presented to me. I'm not going to take long. I will be spot on in terms of my experience. In South Africa, like all other parties, our processes start from the democratic system where nominations are done at locals. You know, the branches of your organization will hold some meetings where, as women, our names will be put in, and if we reach a threshold, our names will be put on the list that goes to the list conference. After the list conference, if your name came up, it is then taken to the electoral committee, which is the IEC in terms of South Africa. Now, the party would apply its policy in doing so, in putting the names on the list. And happy to say, in my party, the NGO, we have adopted a policy on 50-50. If we have 50 males here, the policy says we must have 50 females. So that's the policy, but the policy doesn't cover all other parties. So the experience here is that I got in that way. So most of the women in my party are getting in that way as well. Now, if I have to reflect on the challenges women face in entering within political parties, I will follow the questions. We are looking at the structures. I'm looking at the policies and social norms that make it more challenging for women to advance their party structures. And here I'm also supposed to indicate if there are any actions or programs that I have experienced as a challenge. Now, there are structural policy-related societal barriers. You know, political spaces remain male-dominated, with some parties acting as key gatekeepers. So women often struggle to secure winnable positions on candidate lists because they face, some of you indicated here, the financial constraints, which limit their women's ability to campaign effectively and, of course, widely. So we remain at the mercy of the allocation of funds done by mainly the leadership. And you will know that in the leadership decision-making, even if there is a 50-50 policy, but people who are taking decisions in terms of allocating are mainly males. And as they do so, they are very biased towards male candidates. So political violence, intimidation, and harassment, they happen in South Africa, and they discourage most women from taking part in full leadership roles in South Africa. Now, despite progressive policies and legislation that aimed at promoting gender equality, gaps remaining enforcement, in fact, the way we anticipate that it will be fought, it is only the African National Congress. Maybe at some point your EFF will come up strongly in prioritizing females in their party lists. All other parties in South Africa, really, we are still struggling in terms of gender equity. We have other challenges also culturally. And of course, somebody spoke about society here. Societally, the norms are that males are active in terms of that, and we are limited as women because of political participation. You know, we are expected as women to do some chores at home. So the patriarchal attitudes continue to define leadership in masculine terms, undermining women's credibility and reinforcing stereotypes that portray women as less competent. So traditional gender roles place additional pressure on women in South Africa. Males campaign at the nightclubs. You know, they will visit forever and you have to go home. You have children, you must cook, you must clean the house, you must, a lot of work in African countries. Women are still pushed to do that, whereas males are moving free. So they had time in their hands to do whatever. They go play golf. And as they are doing that at golf sites, they talk, they get support, they attend all the other social activities that are outside there. And we are expected to prioritize domestic responsibilities over the responsibilities politically. Now, I want to look at possible interventions that, you know, as much as we are pressed, so says the Bible, but we are not finished. We still hang in there. We are looking at some strategies in terms of freeing ourselves from these things. So we are looking at stronger enforcement of gender quotas. And at that, we are looking at implementing and enforcing mandatory quotas across all political parties that could enhance women's political representation. That's the first one. The second, we are looking at greater protection against political violence. You know, issues must be addressed, especially addressing gender-based political violence through stricter laws that are not there for now. And security mechanism is crucial for ensuring safe participation for women. The other one is the one that was mentioned also earlier here, financial and mentorship. Maybe I must add that one, mentorship support. You know, women must be provided with other women who will have, women must be provided with access to funding. You know, ways of helping them to access funding. Maybe we need training and mentorship programs that would empower most of the women to compete on the level playing with, you know, at that field where males are as well. So we must get into that. Financially, we are really struggling. We're looking at changing societal perceptions. Public awareness campaigns and education on gender equality can help shift the patriarchal mindset and normalize women's equal participation in society. Though it is difficult for women self to accept this, but the training will actually assist women to understand that we must have a shift in terms of how we think. The third question that I had was to look at the role that women caucuses, the structures such as Women Commission at SALGA, the role they play in influencing party policies for women's representation. The mandate of SALGA, the commission, is to coordinate, to promote, and to advocate for gender-appropriate strategies and practices within member municipalities, while the strategic objective is to lobby and advocate for the representation and participation of women in local government to parity. Our key rallying campaign is 50-50, the representation of women in municipality, both politically and administratively. In SALGA, the SWC has influenced the constitution of the association to enforce that 50-50 representation in all political structures. And I believe we are winning in there. Look, today, as indicated or as was introduced by Janine, I am the deputy president of SALGA, and we are 2 females. We are 3 deputy presidents. 2 are females, 1 is male, and the president is male. So it's 50-50 in that. And in the NEC itself, we have 50-50, 50% females and 50% males. So we sort of evaluate the representation of women within the local governance structures and assess it annually, and also identify and assess the policies and legislation to advance women's participation at that level, at women in local government. Now, the work of SWC, as I was requested to indicate, is amplified by the establishment in all municipalities of the multi-party commissions. Before we used to call them caucuses, but we realized we are limiting them if we term them caucus, because they will only concentrate on the document at hand, and other issues that affect women might be left behind. So we are annually checking that, playing, actually monitoring and evaluation, and we look into those. Now, in terms of gender quotas and affirmative action policies, in South Africa, the ANC has led the country in adopting 50-50, the gender representation policy, which is a concern because it's only the ANC for now that has got that policy, and it's being implemented. The next party out of so many parties in government is the EFF only. And the EFF is not an old organization. It was launched recently. I think it's not 20 years old, but I mean, now the rest of other parties have no such policy. Hence the 44% that I have seen earlier when you were putting up your scope there in terms of women in South Africa. 44%, we are from 50. When ANC was a leader in government, we were at 50 as women, but now dropped to be at 44 because of how the electorate decided to put us. Now, Women's League, in the parties, we have participation of women in their own parties. Now, we have Women's League. Some parties have established Women's League structures to amplify women's voices. The ANC Women's League had played a strong role in mobilizing women and advocating for their rights within their party, mobilizing women from grassroots level, and have influenced policy discussions on gender equality, followed by EFF with the Women's Command that they have as a structure, which actively promotes gender rights and ensures women's issues are prioritized within the party manifestos. And if you look at their manifesto, EFF is the only manifesto that mentioned the importance of women so many times in the manifesto, which making it possible that when they go into government, they have more women. The last one is the question was what can be done in encouraging participation in decision-making and representation in executive positions. I must mention a program director or chairperson of the team that we are disappointed a bit that we could not secure a woman president in South Africa, yet we have a strong women's league. But we failed as ANC. Maybe as we go forward, we will try to change. But even having said so, we tried. We have 50% ministers from the African National Congress who are ministers who are in the executive, who are, and also we in administration, we have women whom we put as DGs, DDGs and all that. And I believe if all other parties can do that, it will be better. We did well over the years of having positions such as speakers of parliament. Remember, we had Balega Mbeta, we now have Mamtogo Didiza, and in the NCOP, we have a female, and we had a female in the previous administration. We had 2-3 premiers who were females. Of course, now we have only 2, and we have executive mayors, and we have mayors. In South Africa, we have this executive system, both executive and this other system. So we have executive mayors and mayors. We have speakers who are women. We have whips, though in terms of whips, we are struggling a bit, but we have achieved a little bit extra administratively. Women are still, I don't know if they do not like to apply administratively, to be municipal managers, CFOs. We have, the number is not so lucrative in terms of that, but I hope that as we participate and as we engage and as we continue with the 50-50 policy, we will end up there. Program Director, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Maboa Bothman. So much is happening in South Africa. I know there's a lot of lessons to learn in terms of the structures, the policies, and we will continue to kind of have discourse on those things. Thank you for, first of all, I really want to thank our first panel for their very rich insights. And I know there are questions, I know there are comments. Keep them coming in the chat, but now we'll go to hear from our second panel. This panel will really provide, the focus here is really an external view of political parties to offer more of an institutional perspective on the topic. So the focus will be here on the strategies for influencing political parties to increase women's representation. And for this discussion, we have 2 panelists. Ladies, I do want to encourage you, we do have to keep tight on our time for our contributions, but our first panelist will be Hemanti Gunasakera, the CEO of the Federation of Sri Lankan Local Government Authorities. Hemanti has over 15 years of experience in local governance and development, and she's a very passionate advocate for women's political participation. She works tirelessly to foster capacity building as well as institutional development across Sri Lanka and beyond. And our second speaker will be Honorable Tamika Davis, who is a member of parliament in Jamaica. She is currently serving her first term as a member of parliament for the Hanover Western, and she's representing the Jamaica Labour Party, having won her seat in the 2020 general election. Ms. Davis serves on numerous parliamentary committees. She's an attorney at law by profession, and she holds a bachelor's in humanities. So she has a very broad, very different background as well. She's committed to driving change in Jamaica's political landscape, and she's been an advocate for women's representation in Parliament. So as I said before, our panelists will reflect really on two questions. What strategies, first of all, what kind of policies, what kind of programs have been successfully, or have successfully influenced party practices to promote women's inclusion, and also reflect on what lessons can we take from these experiences for the wider Commonwealth. Hamanti, over to you.
Thank you, Janine, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Hemanti, and I represent the Federation of Local Governments in Sri Lanka. So to start off with, I would like to kind of discuss with you about the political landscape in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, we do have a mandatory quota of 25% representation of women in the local council. Actually, this didn't come easily. We lobbied for it for a long time, and in 2018, suddenly, like, we were granted with this 25% quota. And at that time, I think most of the political parties were not ready, and they also didn't have enough candidates to be included in their list. Like, the list has to be, there's a mixed system where 10% of women has to be contested, like in the first past the poll list, and the second 50% are on the proportionate base. Like, the proportional list has to consist of 50% of women candidates. So at that time in 2018, as soon as this came, a lot of political parties faced issues, because I think most of the previous speakers also spoke about it. Like, women are reluctant to get into politics due to numerous reasons, which were discussed in the previous panel. So in 2018, when the 25% quota was declared, like, political parties just put some names, like, random names, because it was the responsibilities of the party organizers to prepare these lists. And we, as the National Association, was like vested with this responsibility. So once they came into, like, previously we had only about 87 women in the local councils. We have 431 local councils, of which like 1.87 representation, and 2018 we got 1,982, suddenly shift. So we knew, as the association, we are vested with the responsibility to kind of showcase the value of women representing in the politics. So we were lucky enough, like, to have some programs like the funding support from various institutions, including Federation of Canadian Municipalities under the Partnership for Municipal Innovations, Women in Local Leadership Program, then Commonwealth Local Government Forum, and also International Foundation for Electoral Reform, IFES, supported by the Australian government. So we actually had quite a good support from external organizations, and we immediately went on to start strengthening this capacity of the women who are already taken up the office with the quota system. And at the same time, we also this thought to bringing all these women together, because they were like, they didn't know each other in one place, and we also thought it's good to have this peer learning, and for that we as the association, one side we kind of trained them to take up their role as the political leaders, training in various areas, like the roles and responsibilities, the council mandate, laws, policies, everything. And on the other hand, we also set up the district caucuses, the women's caucuses. These are like, not party specific, but women representations. Like, we brought together all women together. We as the association, we thought it is a good way to pressurize political parties to have more women in the politics. So these women caucuses actually were were very strong, like, during their tenure from 2018 to 2023, they worked together. I mean, leaving their political differences behind, they worked together for common interest. And we also, as the association, had very good kind of a linkages with major political parties. And then at the time, there was the women caucuses, or some kind of a gathering in the political parties, not formally kind of set up. There was no a particular kind of a constitution for these caucuses. They were just like women coming together and having some kind of association within the political parties. But what we realized was women were not given any positions in the Politburo, the decision-making positions within the political parties. This is very important because what we realized was, like, women were used to do campaigning mostly, house to house campaigning, door to door campaigning. And then after that, once men are elected, like these supporters, party supporters, women who went behind and supported
the press releases.
women who supported the male candidates, like, just left. And they are only there to do, the very grassroots level organizing party meetings and stuff like that. But beyond that, their participation actually at the decision-making position was, like, never ever practiced. So as the association, we had some discussions with political parties to organize the women caucuses within the political parties and design the constitution. So we had some samples and we had good discussions to formalize the women's caucuses within the political parties. So as associations, I think this is one of the very good areas where I encourage my colleagues also to build that rapport with the political parties and support to have a formal women's caucuses within the political parties, and also lobbying to get positions in the Politburos. Otherwise, like, you are just there and your voice is never, I mean, the women's voice is never heard at the decision table. So this is one of the important roles the associations can do to kind of build with a good rapport and then organize within the political party. So, and that is one initiative we did with political parties, and that was accepted because the political parties saw us as neutral body and also advocating for local government. So our lobbying was accepted. And actually we did lobby through women councillors who are the members of that particular political party. Not that we just walked into a party headquarters and started, discussing with them, but we got the women councillors representing that particular party, each political party, to advocate along with us, so that the political parties also accepted this is something like, very professional approach, and it worked well. The other initiative we did was with the support of She Leads program, implemented in partnership with International Foundation for Electoral System, IFES, to capacitate young women below 35 years. And this is another initiative which was really, really good. They were women who are anticipating political careers. They have not taken up positions, or they have not contested for elections yet. But we started looking out for young women who are interested in politics, and then we build their capacity, and they are now ready to contest for elections. Some of them actually nominated by political parties. And on the other hand, we got them to lobby with the political parties to set up young women's caucuses within the political parties. So that is also worked very well. And two political parties already established. where young women are now in the forefront looking for other young women, because we in 2023 we just passed another act, amendment to the local government election act, providing a 25% quota for young youth to contest for election. It's not a mandatory representation, but at least there's provision for youth to contest for the election. So our initiative, coupled with the young women, now is at, it's working very well. So where young women also kind of mobilizing young boys and girls also to contest for the upcoming election, because if there is no representation, like, the contestant list will be rejected. So some political parties are now at the moment, because we are anticipating our local government elections very soon, in May. So now the political parties are getting themselves organized, and I hope we can see more young women getting into politics. The other thing what we did was, like, as the association, apart from training, and apart from setting up the networks, we got women to organize certain events, especially in International Women's Day and other days, to support them to organize events so that their leadership capacity is highlighted. So some women actually reached out to various institutions to secure funding and organize events. So the parties themselves recognize this skill, the special skill of women in organizing various events, highlighting their political parties. So which is also good, because that itself shows that leadership of women and their representation, the importance of their representation within the party. Because unless women demonstrate their capacities, the male counterparts will not recognize them. So these organizing special events is something very important. Now, on the 8th of March, we are working with one of the women caucuses in the Central Province to organize the International Women's Day program. So we actually, as the association, we just take a back seat, and we kind of support these caucuses to organize events financially, and also otherwise, like, we guide them through, so that their leadership role is highlighted and where they are recognized for their capacity. The other thing is the other thing is now, at the moment, as I said, in 2018, when we got the quota, 25% quota, there were we were not, most of the political parties were not ready. And we realized 50% of the women who represented councils will not be standing for elections in upcoming, in May, in upcoming elections. So now again, the association invested with the responsibility of training the other set of women. And sometimes some of the initiatives we have worked out with the political parties has to be revived, because we didn't have elections for last 2 years. Actually, it should have been 2023, but this is a period where we had the economic crisis and various other political issues at the national level, which actually delayed the local government elections. So I think as an external body, we always can work with the political parties to increase women representation, lobby for certain things, and also capacitate women councillors and potential candidates, so that their role can be established, in a more professional way, and also matching up with some of the women at the grassroots level. Sometimes there is an issue because the women at the grassroots level cannot reach to the center. So we association can be the kind of a facilitator, where these grassroots women can be linked to the whatever the political parties they are interested in, through the district caucuses, through the caucuses. So even at the time where this is this interim period, we still continue to work with the former women councillors to keep them intact and keep their interest in politics without, like, letting them go out of the system. So that is another responsibility of the external bodies like us, to continuously engage with the women who are like in politics. So these are some of the initiatives Federation has done. And as part of my recommendations to Commonwealth, networking is very important, and I appreciate you continue with your Commonwealth Local Government Forum network, and also peer learning. There are a lot of good case studies which we all can learn from each other. So my recommendation for Commonwealth Local Government Forum is to keep up this network and also share some of the good practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amanti, and that was really good insights from the perspective of the association and the roles that you'll play really in influencing what is happening, providing training, enforcing the mandated quota, lobbying, a very important role of lobbying in a very professional manner, of course, encouraging young women initiatives, and also finding ways to demonstrate women's capacity and ensuring that, and encouraging things like networking. I appreciate that so much coming from networking and peer learning. Thank you again. That's the perspective from the association. And now I want to hand over to Honorable Tamika Davis. We are limited again on time, but we look forward to your contribution, Honorable Davis.
Thank you so much. I say greetings to everyone, because I know we're having different time differences and time zones. And I know they usually say, save the best for last, but I think in this forum, it's going to be save the shortest for last. Since I understand that we are pressed for time, I'm going to be very mindful of that. So again, thank you for this opportunity. I am Tamika Davis, first-time Member of Parliament. And as was said earlier, I entered politics in September 2020. And it has been mentioned by a previous speaker, I believe it was Karina, who said, I had no political background, was never interested in politics really. And so I am better able to understand why it seems daunting for some women to want to even enter politics. So when you're on the outside and you look in, you think as a woman, I would never be able to make it, which is why, since I have entered politics, I have been committed to ensuring that other women get engaged and know that they too can make a valuable contribution. We all know that in terms of legislation, it will only serve us as a nation, as countries everywhere, if we're able to incorporate the perspective of women in our legislative looks. So I know Jamaica is known as a tourist destination, but we have been making strides politically as well. In the last general election, we are now at 29%, which is very close to the 30% target, which has been set by the Beijing platform. In the Jamaica Labour Party, of which I'm a member, we had 14 women, and the total number of women in the lower house, which is the House of Representatives, is still 29%. We have a bicameral parliament, so we have the lower house and the upper house. In the upper house, we have 40% female membership. So we are making big strides, and we can only, get better as we move towards the goal. It must be noted, and I think it was Himanthi who said just now, that when women are elected, they very rarely have a voice. But in our parliament, I must point out with great pride that some of the key positions are held by women. In fact, for the first time ever, the finance minister, that's the Minister of Finance, is the Honorable Favour Williams. And it's the first time Jamaica is having a female being the head of finance. And I think that is just a remarkable achievement. In addition to which, there are other ministries being held by women. I could reference the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Legal Affairs, Ministry of Culture, Gender, Sports and Entertainment. We also have the Speaker of the House being female, and the deputy leader in the House also female. So we are not simply in, we are in and we are holding positions. Again, I know it is not the place that we intend to remain. We are seeking to increase the percentage of women who are not only involved in politics, but making great strides and are having their voices heard. So the question really is focusing on the political parties. In Jamaica, we have two main political parties, the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party. And so the individual political parties have their own caucuses. So within the Jamaica Labour Party, there's a caucus of all women parliamentarians, and I believe it is the same for the opposition. But importantly, for the very first time in December 2022, and well, it was passed in February 2023, we had entrenched in our standing orders, I beg your pardon, in our standing orders, a bicameral women's caucus. And this again is a landmark for us, a great achievement, because this caucus crosses party lines as well as it crosses chamber lines. So members of both political parties form part of this caucus, and whether you're in the upper or lower house, you're also invited to be a member of this caucus. And the importance of it, and I think it was mentioned earlier, is that it does not depend on the present members for its continuity. So because it is entrenched in our standing orders, it means it will continue for generations to come. And that is something that we celebrate. I'm just very briefly, because of the importance I put on it, read from the standing orders that I have here, the objectives. And though there are 8, I'm just going to read out 3 of the more important ones. Well, I deem more important. So the caucus of women parliamentarians will have the duty of raising awareness on gender equality, equity, and parity, and the importance of women's leadership among all parliamentarians and parliamentary staff, as well as among the general public, including by raising the visibility of women leaders in society, facilitating network, building solidarity, and promoting constructive dialogue on issues of importance among women parliamentarians across party lines and chambers. Providing caucus members with professional development opportunities to further strengthen their leadership and their capacities to participate in the legislative process in a gender responsive manner. And finally, also to support capacity building across the Parliament in gender mainstreaming and gender responsive budgeting and costing, and to encourage the application of these tools in parliamentary work. So I believe if you were, and I'd be more than willing to share this, but the core objectives, I believe, summarizes what would be the objectives of caucuses nationwide, globally. And as Jamaican parliamentarians, we are committed to ensuring that the caucus is effective in achieving those objectives. And by so doing, we will promote and have greater inclusion for the advancement of women in politics. I heard earlier someone saying that women are usually behind the scenes, and it's usually the case here. On campaign trails, the women are the party workers, and they are the ones who are out on the day working, but we don't find that vim and vigor extends to coming out on the political scene. And just as it was for me, I'm sure it was just the case that women were daunted by and unfamiliar with the process and the support needed. So what can political parties do? They are integral to us achieving our goals. And the Jamaica Labour Party took a deliberate attempt to ensure that more women were candidates on the ballot for the 2020 election. And this, as I said, was a direct intervention by the party. It was a party policy. And I find that this is an election year, by the way, and I have noticed that a lot more women are offering themselves as candidates in the upcoming election. And truly, it must be as a result of the work that we have been doing since 2020 to ensure that more women are involved. And this extends to our young people as well, our young girls. We want them not only to see us as mentors, but to be more familiar with the process so that they feel comfortable engaging and being a part of the process. I can recall that it was sometime last year, I believe, that we had a all-female sitting of our young women in Parliament. And that too was another momentous occasion for us. And so not only did it expose the young women, but just psychologically, just to see our Parliament filled with all women, it really acted as greater inspiration, not only for the existing parliamentarians, but certainly for our young women and girls all across the island. But again, as it relates to the political parties, they can ensure, as the Jamaica Labour Party did, that the candidates they recruit are female. We do not have a quota system, but I think that comes like a second best to having a quota system. If you ensure, as a political party, having it as your mandate that we are going to recruit female candidates, then certainly it would be a good situation for all the persons involved. And so when you have recruited them, then there becomes the issue of campaign support, because as you know, and I believe it was the second speaker who noted that they are a men's club and they can go on the golf course, in the bars, and ramp up financial support more so than we can do as women. So if it is that they are going to invite us and to make it a realistic attempt, they can provide logistical support, financial, strategic support, and that will help to overcome the barriers for women to run as a successful campaigns. Again, my own experience is that when I entered in 2020, I got the support of the party. I had mentors, both male and female, I must add, and they were able to walk me through and gave me the support that I needed, that I eventually became successful in 2020. I did say I wasn't going to be long. So finally, I just want to end with the role, the importance of having the caucus. Although I stressed on it earlier, it having been entrenched overall, these are some of the goals that a parliament or a country can aspire to ensure that our women are at the table and are given full representation so that we can have a gender perspective when we look at legislation for our countries. I thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Tamika Davis. She gave us a perspective as an MP, and in terms of those advancements and encouragements through mentoring, the need for political parties to make a deliberate attempt at what they do, can provide campaign support, and a series of things that can be easily implemented or worked through with political parties. I really want to thank all of our panelists. It was a very tight set of contributions, very excellent. I know we are limited, as I said, on time, but before I open the floor really to some questions, any recommendations, I know you have a lot of comments in there from those here. I'd like to first invite Dr. Zainab Gimbal, who's the chairperson of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, just to share her first any comments, any recommendations, whether it be based on the contributions made so far, recommendations for influencing political parties in the region, any of your recommendations to support women's representation. Dr. Gimba is actually a member of the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and she has been actively working on issues of women's empowerment. She's a strong advocate. She's worked in various capacities to ensure that women's voices are heard, both at the local level as well as at the national level. She holds a PhD in public administration and public analysis and has extensive work and extensive awards in public service as well. Dr. Gimba, just for a very, very brief set of comments or recommendations, over to you.
Thank you so much, Janine, and thank you. I wish to actually appreciate and thank all of our speakers. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Am I audible? Okay, thank you. I actually can sum up from the different speakers. I have heard from Uganda, Honorable she also was talking about her own journey, and then the issue of mentorship, training, and financial. So Bodman also spoke about challenges of relating to cultural challenges, and then traditional stereotype on women, and then the divided attention women usually have when they are in politics of looking after the home, and then the responsibility at the political level. And she equally also spoke about women participation, especially when it comes to competition with men. And the success story, actually, when she mentioned it is 50-50, it is quite encouraging. Actually, Hemanti too spoke from Sri Lanka's experience. I am happy to know that one of the things that we also do, they also do as lobbying is one of the things that also make women participation easier, especially with the political parties. And she has also spoken about the capacity building of young women, that is mentoring them. And lastly, Tamika also, from her Jamaica experience, has mentioned that financial capacity is one of the key issues with relating to women participation in politics. And as she rightly mentioned, that there is also need for education, for capacity building, and public awareness on all these issues. So rounding up, I think my recommendation is that political parties should establish mentorship schemes in their parties to equip women with necessary skills. That is necessary skills, and as well networks to support them in their roles. This can also be done through the women's wing of the political parties. And another recommendation I will have is also that political parties should also have commitments to gender equality and have strategies to place to do this, including relating with civil society organization and NGOs, both local and international NGOs. And other recommendation I will also have is for us to also further lobby with political parties to see that they have given us nomination as gender quotas. And also one other thing I can recommend is the financial support. We were in Botswana in 2023, and as a success story of political party funding from Namibia, we were there. We lobbied with the president. We lobbied with the president of Botswana at that time, and he gave his commitment that he's going to give political party fundings because this has worked in Namibia. And equally, we were also in Ghana for sensitization of the recently election that was held. And one thing I think about mentorship that most of the speakers has mentioned is very, very important, and I can commend the Civic Center in Ghana, that is the National Commission for Civic Education. We visited that center and we have seen several things they have been doing, numerous work, and it has been a success in the political history of Ghana, especially for women. And this is one thing I think I would recommend, that we also replicate it in other countries. And because of the paucity of time, I think I'm going to stop here and also add to it that Benin and some other parliamentary members of the CWP that were in Abuja last year would bear me witness that we took them around the session of the LMI, that is the Leadership Mentoring Initiative that has been taking place, which candidates, young men and women, were drafted from all the 37 states of the Federation, and they are being mentored for a period of about a year, and they will continuously be mentored even after the training program until when we finally see that they have achieved something in politics, and it remain a success to all of us. And equally, one of the major things that we should work to actually fight very well is the gender-based violence. A workshop which was held in Abuja was based on the gender-based violence, and we are even yesterday we were together with the members of the CPA UK, and all the discussion we are having is about how to prevent gender-based violence, because it's one of the major things that scare women away from politics, especially young politicians that have not that don't have experience. That it scare them, whether it is physical or whether it is cyberbullying or whatever. Gender-based violence is one thing we always fight to see. And I'm happy that all the speakers have mentioned their recommendations, and they have made several efforts in their own various countries, things similar to the objectives of the CWP. So thank you so much, and we see again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gimba, for your insightful remarks. Really, before we proceed again to Q&A, I just want to also invite the second quick response from Councillor Frizette Gibson as the chairperson of the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, just to share again any comments, additional recommendations that you may have on this really important discussion. And after that, we'll take any questions or comments from the floor. To you, Councillor Gibson.
Good morning again, everyone. We must know that with the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, that women's equal participation and leadership in political and public life is essential. Here in the Bahamas, we see an increase of women who take part in politics. However, I believe that more can be done, and that's around the world. I believe that gender quotas is becoming the most popular, and I think it guarantees that women take part in political life. And so therefore, one of the recommendations I believe that all of us can take from this is encouraging that political parties introduce gender quotas so that a percentage of women is automatic in taking part in politics and becoming future women parliamentarians. And so because our good doctor would have taken up some of my time, I would leave you
sorry.
with that. No, that's fine. With that for now. Back to you, Janine.
Thank you, Frizette. That was quick, that was brief, not a problem. Thanks for the recommendations. And a lot of the things are that the sentiments echo across the board. People are generally in agreement with what each of you are all saying about mentoring, different types of activities, to support the process. Now, I really want to open the floor to our participants. The aim really is, and I have I would say about 5 minutes here, sorry. We want to collectively identify key recommendations that to influence political parties to support women's representation. So if you have any thoughts, just raise your hand. I'll come to you. But I really want you to think about specific actions political parties can take, how political parties can collaborate to make the environment more inclusive for women candidates, and maybe also what sorts of roles external actors can play. Councillor just spoke about the CSOs, the NGOs, the collaborations. So I'll take the first hand that I can see. And first of all, I also want to note, I see a lot of comments, and in the chat, we've noted them. I will, if I can, talk to them after, but let's just take questions here first. So I first see Landing B. Sineth. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's a pleasure to be given this opportunity. I want to thank all the presenters. I am Landing B. Sane, and I'm the chairman of Mansa Konko Area Council in the Gambia. I just want to react to comments on the active participation of women, particularly linking it to their political parties. I think one thing leads to the other. Before you can become a woman leader, probably you will have to go through the procedures of party politics participation. And there, my recommendation will be for political parties to create capacity building and mentorship programs for party members, particularly for women, because it's my belief that capacity is a prerequisite, and not only a prerequisite, but it serves as a stepping stone to support political participation, and also to encourage women also to build thick skin, because to be frank, we in politics know whether you are a man or woman, if you participate in politics, you have to receive shots from opponents, either through cyberbullying or verbal attacks. And these are some factors that tend to probably prevent women. So what we need to do is to prepare our women to get focused and participate. But again, women themselves also have to be prepared, because if you want to participate in leadership or political positions, you have to be prepared to participate. And your fellow women also must be ready to support you. But in my part of the world, let me say, sometimes when women participate, it's women themselves that try to bring them down. And that is not encouraging. You know, women must be ready to accept their fellow women, support them like they support men. Somebody said women will be mostly, campaigning. They are very active in campaigning, chanting, and supporting men to get positions. But how about supporting their fellow women to get positions? So to round it up, I think capacity enhancement, mentorship will be very key in supporting women to face the challenges of participating in politics. I thank you very much. I think this workshop is very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Landing. And I'll go straight to our second question. I see Kanisha Gordon. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone. It's just a few recommendations that I'm putting forward in terms of addressing some of the barriers that might impact women's political participation, and in the same breath, increase the participation of women. Firstly, I do believe that at the recruitment process, I think political parties should do more to ensure that the recruitment process does not have sexist or bias in the recruitment process. And one way to also do that is to make sure that they're using inclusive language in the campaign to recruit women, and also within their system. And secondly, I would recommend that political parties create strong frameworks to substantially address breach of harassment, because we know that harassment is a turnoff for a lot of women in the political process. And then there are others too, in terms of at the systemic level, in terms of ballot structure, but that I believe might require a little bit more time, so I won't get into that. But there are issues that shows that depending on the structure of that, it can impact women in the process. For example, different regions, let's say in Canada, for example, there are some seats where it is you vote for persons for a particular district, or you vote for persons to represent the entire municipal region. So depending on where you select slate versus an individual, so those ballot structure have different impact as it relates to women participation in the political process. But I do believe that there is an opportunity to address it in the recruitment process, and also the finances, as many persons have already spoken about.
Thank you so much, Kanisha. And again, we are keeping all these comments for our reporting and everything beyond developing our programming. Our next question, I see you, Flo Lucas. Go ahead, Flo.
Thank you. And can I thank everybody for what's been a really interesting debate. Things to say. The first is, I think we can think about the now, but we must also think about the future. And listening to all of you, there is something that unites us, and that is the need to ensure that women are recognized as being able to be participants in the political process. And what that means is that we need to ensure our children at school are taught about equality, that boys and girls are taught that each of them has a right to be engaged in politics, to make decisions, and so on. The second issue I think that has been raised has been really useful, and that is looking at women in political parties now. I've been an elected member now for nearly 40 years. And my party, the Liberal Democrats in the UK, has actually worked to change the way we do things so that we actually provide training for women, training for local parties, and we ensure that there is financial support for women. So that, for example, if a woman is going to seek to be selected as a candidate and doesn't really have the money to go out and buy a new dress or a new top or something of that sort, that kind of assistance can be given. And what that means is she then has the confidence in herself to be able to do things. And I think doing things like that can help enormously. The third thing I'd like to say is that I think there is a role here for government, and actually for the Commonwealth too, because the Commonwealth could be insisting that at that level, and indeed at government level, we could ensure that women have an equal opportunity to stand. And actually that will mean a change in some of our electoral systems. I know in the UK, for example, in my area, we have a female leader of the council. We have a council of 40 members, but only 15 of them are female. And if every council had to have 50-50, how much better that would be? How much better? And so I think government needs to be looking at that. I think the Commonwealth could do a great deal to drive that. And I think at local level, we could also, hence my mention of our voice for our young people, so that they have the right to come and say to us as councillors, what are you doing about? And whether they're girls or boys, immaterial. You are there, you have the right to say that. And that gives those young people a belief that they too have a say in politics. And that makes a difference to how they feel about joining political parties, whichever one that is, and about how they can change the way things are in their street, in their area, in our town and elsewhere. And can I thank you for your attention? It's been most interesting.
Thank you so much, Flo. And I'll go quickly on to Lovita, maybe in 1 minute, if you have any recommendations or comments. Go ahead, Lovita.
Yes, thank you. It's Lovita from Bermuda. I would say that too often us females do not look at other female organizations outside of the political realm and use their power and their expertise to ensure that they link with our political parties in moving those parties towards fair representation. And if you look at organizations like churches and the like, you will find that there's a very strong female base. And the power of women within those organizations are pretty much still untapped. I think because most of us come from countries where we advocate for equal rights in the workplace, equal pay, and all of those things. But all too often in institutions, we don't see those things at practice, even within our political parties. And so more has to be done to ensure that the pressures that are on our parties to practice what we preach. And I can't emphasize that enough. I think that most of us women who have been successful, when you look in the broader communities, we do have a large contingent of women who support us. I know me, myself, having been successful at the polls at least 5 times, and I've only run 5 times and been successful 5 times. I started my work first showing that I wanted to be key within my community. I went out and canvassed for 2 years straight and made myself a known entity in households within my constituency. And so when it came time for election, and I guess my party almost had no choice but to advance me as the candidate, because they saw that the influence coming from within the community in support of me to represent them. And I think that I will just, and as I began, I think that we must rely more heavily on using particularly the influence of women. I'm not trying to segregate the male community from us, but I think we need to use the influence of women to help promote us as women within various institutions, but especially within the political realm.
Thank you, Lovita. Again, interesting comments and recommendations. Ladies, unfortunately, I could only take 2 more comments or recommendations, and the rest I would ask if you can put them in the chat. We do have to wrap up. So I can take Yasmin, and I want to say, Anuya, that I'm going to skip you because you're with CLGF and you have fantastic. I know you can write it in the chat. So Yasmin and Kate, if that is okay. Quickly, thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you. And I think a lot has been said. I've been the chair of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for Canada for 7 years. And I have worked with the Commonwealth Women's Parliamentary Association. The problems we have discussed have been perennial. We still have not been able to overcome it. But I'd like to give few suggestions. I think networking is very important. And for women who have or want to participate, get a very strong group. I used to belong to the Professional Business and Women's Association, and they came out to my nomination, to my election, and they helped me. And if we create that strong coalition, now I've been in Parliament and never failed. I've always won my elections. What I'd suggest is that political parties must establish funds. We have funds here in Canada for women. So there's the Margaret Campbell Fund and there's the Maloney Fund, and one is for the federal, one is for the provincial. And so if we do that, then women are not so concerned about funding. They get it, but they also have to raise it. And I know men are able to raise more funds than women are. And then there is an organization called Equal Voice in Canada. So if we go to civil society organizations, it is important that we use them as well. And for the last comment I'll plug in is that I created a masterclass for the Commonwealth on gender budgeting. The reason I'm telling you this is because it was done. Women's caucuses are important. We pushed governments to ensure that the budget does not favor men, but it favors families. So with that,
thank you so much, Yasmin. And our final comment, Kate, keep it short, keep it tight. You're on. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm in Perth in Western Australia. It's late at nearly 11 o'clock at night here. Look, I just wanted to say that 30 years ago in Australia, the Australian Labor Party introduced affirmative action quotas, and we mandated that within our own party across the country, 30% of women needed to be elected in seats. And since that period of time, we've gradually moved that up to now 50% of all seats that we run candidates in must, at state and federal level, must be women. And so we've seen a significant change, not just running women in non-held or hard to win seats, but we are seeing more and more women now as par for course being run in what is regarded as a safe seat, a long-term seat, and to the point now where if we cannot reach that 50%, and if a male holds that seat, there have been occasions where they have been persuaded to move on so that a woman can take that seat. And I'm actually fronting my 8th election this Saturday, hopefully my 7th to be elected. And we've seen that this time round, a number of very senior men have retired and have been replaced by fantastic young women who hopefully in those safe seats will have a long-term career as members of Parliament. So that's been a significant change for my political party in Australia. It is not a decision that was taken by the more conservative side, and you'll see that the Labor Party has a higher proportion of women across each of our parliaments as a result of that decision taken 30 years ago. I thank you very much. And it meant changing the rules. Had to change the party rules and stick to it.
Thank you so much, Kate. So all of your contributions, ladies and gents, I appreciated the men as advocates in there. Your contributions have been significant, and those recommendations that are in the chat and your comments in the chat, I have to ensure that you know We have seen them, we've noted them, and they will make their ways into reporting. You will all get the information back to you, and we will advance definitely with all of your thoughts. So I really want to close off by first handing over to Dr. Gimble to close off the session, share our next steps, and to give our thanks. So it was a very powerful discussion. I want to hand over to you, Dr. Gimble, to close us off. You are on mute right now, Dr. Gimble.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Xavier. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you for the facilitation. We thank you so much. And I would like to thank all the speakers, participants, and facilitators for your thoughtful contributions to today's webinar. Colleagues, as we come to the end of this crucial session, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has joined us. It has been an inspiring and engaging discussion, and I'm confident that the insights we have shared today will contribute meaningfully to the ongoing work to advance women's political participation across the Commonwealth. As the chairperson of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Network, I'm deeply proud of the work that our network has been doing over the years. The CWP has been dedicated to supporting over 3,000 women parliamentarians from across the Commonwealth, and including parliamentary staff. Our mission is very clear: to promote women's full and equal participation in all aspects of political and parliamentary leadership, to increase women participation. We equally focus on helping women parliamentarians to be more effective in their roles, ensuring that parliaments are gender-sensitive institutions and encouraging both male and female parliamentarians to embed a gender perspective in all aspects of their parliamentary work. The CWP works closely with our partners, including the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, to ensure that women's voices are heard not just in parliaments, but also in the corridors of power at every level of government. As we know, this is crucial because the changes we seek at local and subnational levels can have a profound effect on the laws and policies that are shaped at the national level. Together, we share a common goal of increasing women's participation and ensuring gender parity in all political systems. Reflecting on today's discussion, it is clear that political parties are both the key challenge and the key solution in advancing women's political inclusion. We have seen that political parties, as the gatekeepers to elected positions, must do more to remove barriers, build support structures, and challenge systemic biases that hinder women's progress. The examples shared today of gender quotas, mentoring programs, and party reforms give us hope and show us that change is not only possible, but is happening. But we must not rest on our laurels. The journey ahead requires us to work even harder to dismantle the barriers that remain. The next steps from this session should focus on action, identifying political strategies to influence political parties, building alliances with advocacy groups, and ensuring that political parties are held accountable for their promises to achieve gender parity. We'll be compiling a summary report of today's session, capturing the key insights, recommendations, and next steps for promoting women's representations across the Commonwealth. This will be shared with all participants and will serve as a valuable resource as we continue our work towards increasing women participation and women empowerment. As we close today's webinar, I urge you all to take the conversations we have had here and use them as a springboard for change. We need continued momentum and collective action to ensure that political parties not only support but actively work to increase the representation of women. Let's continue to collaborate, share knowledge, and hold ourselves accountable for achieving the gender equality we seek. Once again, thank you to everyone for your time, your expertise, and your dedication. Together, we'll ensure that the future of politics is one where women are not just represented, but are leading the way. Thank you, and I look forward to the steps we will take together in the coming month. Goodbye and God.
Wonderful day, and look out for the report. Let's continue to accelerate action. Bye, everyone.